this person said to me, guess what? A linguist is coming to Bryn Mawr. We didn't have a linguistics department or even a single linguist. And you know, she's going to study linguistics. And I said, what's that? And from then on, it was just so much fun. That was the first course that I ever took that I was willing to stay up late to study instead of fool around. And I'd sit in a chair looking at word lists and trying to figure it all out, you know, getting into the distribution of the sounds and the allophones and all of that. And so I loved it. In that third year, there were these an announcement that came across the desk asking for linguists to go and work in Guatemala. And I looked at that announcement and it looked awfully interesting. But then I said, well, I can't do that. I don't speak Spanish. I have a husband who doesn't have anything to do in Guatemala. I don't know anything about Guatemala. It scared the pants off me. It just doesn't seem like a good thing. So I threw it away. And then the same announcement came again. And I looked at it a little more deeply and I said, well, you know, why couldn't I do that? So I was hired as one of these two linguists. I was hired to work on two vastly different dialects of the language MAM, M-A-M, and to teach speakers of that language about their own language and about how to analyze it. I noticed this very curious phenomenon, which I may have talked about before in here, I don't know, but I'll tell it again because we can't remember, which was that I would be sitting on one side of the desk with my, you know, Swadesh list and then later my 650 word list and so on, and asking questions and writing them down. And I was working with two men from San Ildefonso, Ixtehuacan, and they were two young men of, one was 20, one was 21. As I recall, they were both named Juan. I eventually worked with a third person from Ixtehuacan who was named Juan. This is a northern MAM variety, spoken in Huehuetenango, which is on the border with Mexico. And so as I was writing stuff down, I noticed that they were copying it. They were looking at what I was writing upside down, and they were putting it down and translating it to right side up on their pieces of paper. And that went on for a few days, and finally it occurred to me that something was going on there. And so I talked to them about that, and they said, well, they wanted to know how to write. And so I stopped eliciting, and I started teaching them to read and write in MAM. And they were smart and they picked that up right fast, as we might say in Texas. So that was my introduction to learning to pay attention to what speakers wanted and not just what my task was. And what I think I discovered at that time was that what speakers wanted was to be able to take some control of their own languages through the written form, through the spoken form, through the analysis. I kind of regarded it as that then it was part of my responsibility to respond to those obvious desires. They wanted to learn to read and write, well, then I had to teach them. It wasn't a matter of, well, if I have time, I'll teach them to read and write next week. It was, I had to teach them right away because that's what they wanted. And I think that that is a kind of a, something I realized when people want to know something and you know it, then you have a responsibility to teach it to them. Where else are they going to get it if it's not from you? It's really, really, really important to respect other people's intelligence. That the idea that because you're a speaker, you're not going to find theoretical approaches to language study interesting. Well, why not? Is my answer to that. I mean, or my question directed to people say, you know, whoever, why would a speaker be interested in, and then they name some, you know, esoteric bit of theory. Well, why wouldn't a speaker be interested in such things? If anybody's interested in it, then you would assume that maybe a speaker would be at some point as well. There's nothing that says to me that speakers can't be interested in esoteric theoretical approaches to language study. I mean, what are the assumptions behind declaring that speakers are not interested in that sort of thing? Well, I mean, the one assumption is that is that speakers have to be interested in only practical matters. And if you introduce people to something that's not, quote, practical, then they won't be interested. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If it's interesting to anybody, why wouldn't it be interesting to speakers? They've got that intelligence. You have to respect it. You don't talk down to them, and you don't assume that they can't learn it. You just have to find in your capacity the words and the methods that will help people to learn what you want to teach them and not hinder them. And that's a major project for those of us that are brought up in an academic world, trying to find all the right ways to talk to people who are not yet graduate students about linguistics is not an easy thing to do, but you've got to work on it. Now, I have to tell you something to end up today that I think is the most important thing about this kind of project. Speakers of indigenous languages, to my mind, will never have control of their languages if they leave some aspect of those languages always to foreigners. I think that's the most important thing, that those of us who are true outsiders, we don't speak the language, we don't come from the community, and those of you who are getting the outside education but are not outsiders have to work on. It's making sure that people in the community become the leaders of any part of this whole enterprise of language, of strengthening the languages through the use of linguistics, linguistic knowledge, and materials that you can produce once you have those. Something that's been either in the back or the forefront of my mind for years and years now, that the whole point of this is to not keep people dependent on you. It's to do exactly the opposite.
But one thing that just comes to my mind from listening to you about all of these things, that that you're an activist, and an activist for what? And it seems to me that you're an activist for intellectual justice, really. That the framework that you're talking about is really bringing out intellectual resources, intellectual capacity, trying to really flesh that out. And language couldn't be a better arena for that, but we have to be able to talk about it in technically appropriate terms. So you're trying to leverage linguistics towards intellectual justice.
Thank you, Tony. I think that was very well put. And I think you're probably right, but thank you for stating it in a clear and clear way, and one that and I'm grateful that you put it in those terms, really. And you're right. That the point of all of this is that with regard to language, to have control of your own language, you have to have somebody or other who is contributing to the issues about that language because they know how. And if there's nobody in your community who can contribute, then you don't have control. You're always, listening to some outsider, like linguists or educators or politicians, and they're telling you what to do with your language. But so if somebody or other in your community has control, that is to say, can do all of this for themselves, then yes, you're in a much stronger position. And I think that is crucially important.
Thanks, Nora.
You're all are welcome. I like doing this.